Our TV telecast is set to begin, so I'm going to kick this off and request Devika to introduce the next panel.
We've had an excellent morning, and we promise that our evening sessions will be even better than what we witnessed in the morning. Some more pertinent conversations are lined up on the law, on the Constitution. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce our next set of panelists as well as our next session. We have with us Ms. Malvika Rajkotia, founder, Rajkotia Associates Advocates. We have with us Ms. Manali Bhandari, an advocate, and also Ms. Alkanshi Dahar, founding and managing partner of Law Offices of India. They will be moderated by Ms. Priya Sehgal, editorial director of NewsX, on very pertinent questions that continue in the field of law. We're taking a break a little bit from the politicians and the politics, and we are moving now to another important conversation on aspects of divorce, inheritance, women and men, and everything in between. I request everyone in the hall to please find a seat for yourself so that we can proceed with the next session. Thank you so much, Malvika Rajkotia, Manali Bhandari, and Alkanshi Dahar, for joining us. Priya Sehgal, over to you.
Thank you, Devika. And we are the unfortunate between the food and the conclave. So we hope to get people here after the food for thought. But because the topic what we are discussing is a very important one. We're talking about women and the law, women's rights, and also the fact that, there are women's rights, but there is also huge misuse of that, the abuse of that. And we've seen recently what happened, to that techie Atul Kashyap, who actually committed suicide, alleging harassment, and he left a, 40-page suicide note. So taking that into account, what are the takeaways? Alka, I know you and I have been talking about this case, so I'll begin with you first. We've been talking about misuse of laws. So so then first tell me about Atul's case, then I'll take the story further.
See, the Atul's case was, is it on? Hello, yeah. So the Atul's case was, I think, just, the boil had to come to a peak, and it did that. Notwithstanding that, we've all been talking about it for so many more years. Bottom line is that we do have all the acts. See, Atul's case was very unfortunate. It's so emotionally charged that whatever we say, you can't take away the fact that it was a tragic case which resulted in very, very bad, adverse, and unfortunate consequences. See, but like personally, the practical side of it is also entirely different. We do have cases where we do have this multiple millions of women who are actually suffering at the hands of the judiciary system. The system has to be revamped. The very fact that he committed suicide was unfortunate. But you really can't, I know this sounds politically very incorrect, but you really can't point it all on, I don't know the facts of the case, but you really can't say that the wife and the in-laws and all need to be put behind the bars. There are instances when the in-laws and the wives, they really don't do much, and in spite of that, the husband has committed suicide. I've had one of those very unfortunate cases. So it really depends on the individual. It depends upon the facts and the circumstances of the case, and we really can't say that the laws are being misused. But yes, in the last 1 week, 2, 3, 4 weeks, and in a month, the Supreme Court has also repeatedly said 498A has been misused, and yes, it has been misused. On the other side, you have to look on both sides of the coin. On the other side, too.
1 second, Alka. I request everybody, please keep silent at the back. We are also recording this for television and it's going live, so please keep silent. Sorry.
Okay, now going back to what I was saying.
Misuse of 498A.
Misuse of 498A. So the laws have to be there because the Indian women are vulnerable, so they need these laws. But then again, the women are misusing it. It's the case of crying wolf all the time. When the real, genuine case needs the intervention of the judiciary, we all look at it with skeptical eyes and say, maybe, these guys are exaggerating it. In the end, to summarize, now what I will say is we need a robust judiciary. We have all the laws which are in place, but we need a robust judiciary and the implementation. That has to be done in a fair, timely manner, so people, be it husband or a wife, they both get justice.
Fair enough. Manali, the fact is that there are laws in place to protect women. But what happens when women misuse? So what are the checks and balances that can be laid, And if you've been following this case, if you would like to...
Yeah, I have followed it a bit only, whatever came in the media and all, because it just happened. And I agree, it's most unfortunate that, this gentleman took his life, and in his video he has blamed his in-laws and his wife. But I think we must not lose sight of the fact is that all these laws came into existence because of the atrocities that were being done to women in our country. Dowry deaths, let's not forget, dowry is still a very, very big problem in our country. And these are, there may be some amount of misuse, but I think we should not take away from the fact that there are a large number of women who are still suffering. And though there are laws, implementing those laws, getting something from, takes a lot of time. And it is sometimes not really, the system does not work fairly for women either. So one thing which I have noticed in my practice is that the only reason, I don't think people want to misuse laws. I don't think people want to come and tell a lie. But because sometimes they have nothing else left to negotiate with, and even it's not as if their spouses, their husbands or families are being so nice that, okay, you want a divorce, I'll give you, take care of the children, I'll take care of you. They are struggling so much for their basic needs that sometimes they feel that, maybe just putting some pressure may get them somewhere. And this is where I feel this is an unfortunate thing. Maybe if our law can address a system and a way in which we ensure that women will get something upfront, and not have to struggle for it, that would, I think, go in a long way. Because, filing a criminal case or a false case, it's a punishment even on the complainant. Yeah. Nobody wants to do it willingly. Correct. Even sometimes in genuine cases, people don't want to do it because they don't want to go through that hassle of, dealing with a criminal case. So I really feel that I think we should not get swayed by a few cases which where there may have been some misuse, and even in this case, frankly, we should not just go on media this thing. I think a fair chance should be given to the family of the wife also to respond and see what actually happened. We don't know, maybe he had some other mental, because he's taken a very extreme step. So anyway, this is my view in the matter.
Malvika, more than this case, of course, if you want to comment on that, but also what are the checks and balances? For instance, we've also been debating, will a prenup in place, would that have helped? I know in India it's not mandatory, but there are cases. So what is your stand on that?
So before I respond to this, I'd just like half a minute to continue with what Alkashri and Manali said. I so agree with them, of course. But in addition, I would like to say that it takes this incident or any incident, ever since women enabling laws have been passed, we have been hearing as a shouting echo simultaneously a clamor of misuse. And yet when politicians, for example, are framed for murder, or businessmen, there's an ED, nobody is talking about misuse of those laws. Nobody is talking about unraveling statutory protections otherwise of the accused in other cases because there is alleged misuse. Whereas we need to read the papers every day that misuse is rampant there. So to identify women's causes and neutralize that battle with the argument of misuse is, to my mind, must be removed from the narrative. So we should not be discussing misuse. We don't care. The point is that in the cost analysis, women are benefiting. And that's all we have to talk about. Just as in any other law which is subject to misuse, the broader benefit is there, which is why it's there in the first place. You don't neutralize it because of potential misuse. So this argument for misuse has to stop, or this argument. Now coming to the next, prenups.
For one second, Alka wants to just quickly come and then I will come to you.
See, I completely agree with what you're saying, and just going forward on that. But I do think that misuse of laws need to be checked because it erodes the credibility of the judiciary. And when a real, genuine case comes, then people look at it.
I agree with you. All I'm saying is, let us not talk about misuse only in the context of women's issues.
No,
it becomes,
not.
that's all.
It's,
let's talk about it generally.
Absolutely.
When there's an ED raid or a CBI comes in and this, let's talk of misuse there.
Across
Why
the
do we
board.
have to get defensive about women enabling laws is all I'm saying.
Okay, fair enough.
But having to add...
With a lawyer, there's always a but.
But 498A, I mean, it's a robust provision. The intent is right where it's supposed to be, in the heart. But yes, it has been misused to such a great extent that even the courts have to come in and say, please, stop it now.
My argument remains the same,
exactly.
that courts have stepped in only for the same reason that any establishment steps in on women enabling laws. So they will shout just as much as fathers and husbands are shouting, and it's unfortunate. There is no reason for those comments about misuse of 498A. Let them pass the same judgments with regard to misuse of a whole lot of other laws. But coming back to your second part of your question, which is with regard to
Prenups.
Prenups. It's a very good idea. It's commonly thought wrongly that it is not within our jurisprudence, but that's not correct. Even though there's no statutory provision for it, there is a case law in which the High Court has said that we need to consider it, number one. Number two, the Indian Divorce Act does envisage prenups and even post-nups. Now, post-nups become particularly valuable because it's a negotiation of assets and so on after the family has settled together for whatever reason. For example, if there is a stressed family, and sometimes when they've come to me for advice, what we have done is they may not want to separate or divorce, that's drastic, but perhaps for better security, financial security of everybody concerned, the elders, the children, the so on, they come to a family arrangement, which becomes more, emerges from the marital situation, not like a HUF family arrangement. So it's a good idea. But then comes the other side. The law with prenups has to have equality of bargaining power. So we have to consider that when prenups are negotiated for women or women negotiate it for themselves, which is hardly ever the case, do they have an equal bargaining power with the men? Most of the time it's been found that they don't. The UK has some law on it, which is good to consider, which is that we will treat the prenup as a baseline, but if we find that there's inequality of bargaining power while negotiating it, we will strike it down. So that's broadly like in an equity jurisdiction, discretion to be used.
Manali, your stand on prenups. We've had a conversation earlier.
Yeah, we've spoken about this earlier. And I mean, prenups could be a good thing again, only if we can ensure that they're going to be fair to both sides. In India, unfortunately, our socio-economic situation is such, people are so keen to marry off their daughters. If we have prenups, we will find that people will agree to all sorts of things, and you know, then the woman will actually be stuck with an unfair deal if unfortunately the marriage doesn't work out. And that's where I feel that it's not, maybe we are not still there. I mean, a lot of people are now wanting to sign prenups. In fact, they want to sign them even knowing very well that they are not recognized by law yet in India, but just as some sort of evidentiary value, to have some value of that what the parties intended. But I personally think this is something which needs a deeper thought and some way, as Malvika mentioned, to ensure that both of them, husband and wife, are on an equal footing when entering into such an agreement.
So this equal footing is the way I have a issue. Even at the time of prenup, your wife, the woman may not be on an equal footing. Postnup is usually during times of stress. So again, there is no equal footing. So what is the, where do you stand and what is the solution?
I'm a staunch believer, and I think prenups should be made, they are enforceable. I mean, in UK, it just happened in 2010, so I guess it'll take some time for us to get there. But in fact, Manali and I have worked on a common client in which we were negotiating a prenup, while very much knowing that, if tomorrow it goes to the court, it's going to be a different ball game altogether. But like on equal footing, etc., we can put in the safeguards in the prenups itself. Like in the UK, both the parties need to take advice from the lawyers. 28 days, you need that time period before you sign the prenup. So it's not on the last day they make you sign the prenup, because that will be a lot of influence and pressure on the parties. Financial disclosures have to be made in the prenups. So all this, I think, goes in a long way, because you see, practically speaking, again, when any marriage goes south, the husband and the wife are adults. They can kind of manage, but it's the children which are the greatest sufferers, and they are the biggest victims. Because, and I really do think if the prenups are made, at least it gives a kind of a guideline, a pathway, to the court and to the family and to the husband and wife, that this is where we agreed upon. Of course, there are certain things like the custody of the child, etc., which you can't put in a prenup. These are outside the purview of the prenup. But on distribution of assets, how they're going to divide it, the students, the children's education, etc., I think it's extremely important. And one more thing is, it's got an emotional charge to it, prenups. Everybody says, we can't start a marriage thinking like, please sign this paper. So there's a lot of emotion attached to it. But my answer to that would be like, and they think, no, we are already thinking of a divorce when we are about to get married. It puts bad things in the head. It's like buying a car in a showroom. I mean, you don't take out a car without an insurance. You don't buy a car thinking tomorrow I'm going to have an accident. You don't do that. But you always invariably take an insurance on this. So prenup is kind of an insurance. And also, times have changed now. So you have to move in with the times. Things need to change. Laws need to change with times.
Wow, that's a whole new debate. But Malvika, how often do you see gender biases being reversed? For instance, do women always have the upper hand when it comes to child custody? Do men do women pay alimony to men? How often do you see those kind of cases?
Women, I don't believe, have the upper hand necessarily with regard to custody. Those are very bitterly fought battles. And unfortunately, in my experience, often the fathers want more than access for two reasons. Partly it is to assert power, that if you want my money, then I want the children just as much type of approach. The other is also in the hope that they will have to pay less if she's not the sole caregiver to the children. That's one part. What was your second question, sorry?
Do women pay alimony to men?
Yes. So, in my career, I have had 3 instances where the women were really far wealthier, and may I say, paid without question. Wow. And just, that's it, this is my assets, I want out, and paid substantially. In one case, it wasn't up to half, in another, it was as much as half. And I have never known a man to do that.
Manali, do you want to comment on this gender reversal?
In fact, I'm currently advising someone where this is precisely the case in hand, and in fact, the husband has stopped working, or at least claims he's doing nothing, or is unable to do anything, and because he wants his wife to, pay for for him. I don't know how that will play out eventually, but the wife is more than happy to pay and finish everything off. I think so where women are, and I agree. I think a lot of times when there is no clarity or there's all this negotiating for financials is used actually to get at something else very often. You know, you put pressure in whichever which way. That's why even men very often don't want to pay maintenance in the manner which they should, they ought to, because either they are being vindictive, they don't want to pay, and B, they always want to have control. And even after a divorce or even after a separation, want to have constant control on the wife, the ex-wife, the children, and the best way to do it is through money. That's the problem.
Which brings me to, if you want to comment on this point, and also Alka, one last point is on the inheritance laws. You know, on paper, yes, it is equal, but you know, how does it work out on ground? Are women bullied into, you know, giving up for their rights for the men?
So the examples of what we've just seen goes a long way to show the patriarchal bent of mind, you see. I've also seen in the cases that you've done pertaining to family law, it's the ego that basically comes in. It's the ego and the emotion attached to all those years, and the guy always not that, I mean, this is a kind of a generalization, and my apologies to the men here, but the very fact remains that culturally, there are certain things culturally, like in, I don't want to name countries, but there are certain countries which have this patriarchal bent of mind. So the husband invariably has to have the upper hand. And if
No,
that is...
name the country. India is one of them.
Absolutely. No, no.
Probably top of the list.
Probably.
No, they might be worse, but India, yes, definitely is. So that is why I always, okay, now, that is my take on it. So invariably, it's the emotion and the cultural thing that kind of bends it. And look at it, kudos to the women. Even I have seen that women always tend to be more temperate. They seem to be more fair and less biased. I think it's something to do with the culture. And they all want to, want to move on.
Last take on the inheritance laws.
So actually, it's not equal. Now, after the 2005 amendment in the Hindu Succession Act, she is a co-partner. A daughter is a co-partner. But only in an HUF, how many you look at only catering to the very top 5%, which has the kind of wealth which is in an HUF. But otherwise, may I say, 1956, when these statutes were passed in Parliament, the concept of will traditionally did not exist in Hindu law. And in fact, Section 30 of the Hindu Succession Act was enacted to neutralize even whatever benefit the daughter was getting as an equal heir in her father's property. To say, and that's how it was passed in Parliament, to say, no, but you retain the right to will if you don't want your daughter to have it. So that, nowadays they keep talking of colonial legacies and how we don't want to and move on and so on. But the will, I would like any one of those to actually get rid of it, which is that it's not there amongst traditional Hindu law. But that's only Hindu law. Is to other personal laws as well. Women are not equal heirs, but obviously degrees of inheritance depend on various what personal law applies. But again, there are women in the role of daughters who inherit the way they do, and when we talk inheritance, we only talk in that context. But a wife gets even more marginalized. So, for example, the 2005 amendment, which enabled the daughter as a co-partnery, is at the expense of the wife in that household, isn't it? Because her husband would get proportionately less. And there are so many estates that have been unsettled now because of the so-called retroactive operation of this amendment, which has been held by the Supreme Court, which has unsettled nearly 40, 50 years of settled estates. So there is a lot of turmoil about this, but I think while the conversation is going on, let's see where it goes. One hopes to better equality.
We're out of time, but Manali, have the last word.
No, I think these are very complex questions. They cannot be. The main thing is that we have to change the mindset, because people still find ways and means to cut daughters out. And therefore, I think we need to sort of instill this, that whether it's a boy or a girl, they are equal. They should be treated equal in in inheritance, in estate. And then a wife is also equal. Yes, it's
not at the cost of wife.
Yeah.
Okay, on that note, thank you so much for this conversation and for being here. But, well, more power to us.
Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us at the third Law and Constitution Dialogue. I request Shri Rana Yashwant, Editor-in-Chief of India News, to please join us on stage to present a token of our appreciation to Alkashri Dahar, Founding and Managing Partner of Law Offices of India. That is an original copy of the Constitution, ma'am. Also presented to you is a very special photograph of the first Constituent Assembly. Thank you so much once again to Ms. Manali Bhandari as well for joining us and taking out your precious time to shed light on some very pertinent matters related to the family. And last but not least, we also have Malvika Rajkotia, founder Rajkotia Associates Advocates. Thank you so much, Malvika ji, for joining us at the third Law and Constitution Dialogue. We appreciate you taking out your precious time.